Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Today I had a losing streak on chess.com. I played a couple of games in the morning and lost both, kicking myself with some silly one-move blunders. Tonight I probably shouldn't have played as I was feeling tired and had had some alcohol to drink, losing 3 games in a row. I have a slightly unhealthy habit of playing until I win at least one game, and so for this last game, I launched an aggressive Vienna game and felt vindicated with a triumph. Please enjoy. So let's have a quick look at the review first. So this is chess.com's algorithm. Accuracy is not really that good for a short game, 78%. This blunder will show in context. I suppose that was a bit of a gambit. Wasn't good, but it worked out for me. But a number of inaccuracies in this game. The opponent struggled a bit with the line that we ended up playing. On to analysis. All right, so I played the Vienna in this game. So e4, e5, knight c3. The opponent responds with the Shurulev counter gambit, which personally I think isn't particularly good. White's already ahead, and I suspect most people who play this don't really know what they're doing. But the idea anyway is to capture the knight on c3, but that's actually completely okay for white. So next move, develop my bishop to c4. The opponent captures the knight. That's the only reason you would do the Shurulev counter gambit. Capture back with the b pawn, which basically opens up the b file for the rook, though I ended up not really needing that in this game. The opponent develops knight to f6, so an attack on the e4 pawn. Now, as I no longer have the knight on c3 defending, I need to defend that pawn, and easiest way to do that is with d3. Opponent pushes a flank pawn, h6. I think they were thinking that this would help prevent a pin of their knight against the queen. That's good, I suppose, though I wasn't really trying to do that anyway. And now I can launch what looks like the Vienna gambit, though it's a little bit later now and things have moved and things are a little bit different. But this move effectively invites the opponent to capture. Here, it's not as bad as in the actual Vienna gambit, though it has a lot of the same trickiness. So the advance of the pawn to e5, it looks like that the knight doesn't have anywhere to go, given that these squares are all covered. It looks like that they will have to retreat back to g8. Now, I think in this game, in this position, the opponent does have the opportunity to advance to d5, launching a counter attack, and I suppose potentially en passant. So they do actually have some other options. Nonetheless, the opponent didn't see that, retreated to g8, which instantly puts me quite a bit ahead, because now I'm substantially ahead on development. I developed my other knight to f3. The main reason here is I just don't want to face this line where the opponent develops their queen to h4 with check. I think, again, it's okay, but it's just easier not to have to deal with that. The opponent now develops their pawn to d6, which is a good move, but again, very, very tricky here. So here I decide just to capture that hanging pawn. Interesting that that sort of loses my advantage. I reckon that pawn move is better. Yep, I suppose that that does probably make sense from a pawn structure perspective. However, this invites the opponent to capture with the pawn, which again, very natural looking move, but it's actually bad, really bad when you look at the evaluation, almost +7, well, +7.5. So it's really bad for the opponent. I can capture now with my knight, and now the knight and bishop both have an attack on that weak f7 pawn, which is looking pretty good. Opponent brings out their bishop to as I suppose as a way of defending that pawn. and I suppose, are they asking the question, do I take? The computer analysis says that is actually really good for me. However, at this point, I was trying to do something really aggressive. And when you do something really aggressive, the opponent has the opportunity to make mistakes. And I saw that queen to h5, now having sort of potentially 3 attackers on that f7 pawn looked really, really good potentially. Now, it's objectively a bad move because the opponent can simply block that move with a development of their knight. Now, obviously, I can't take that, given that that square is defended by their bishop. So if they develop that knight, I would be forced to retreat retreat my queen and losing tempo. However, I thought that there was a better than average chance that the opponent might actually try to block with a pawn move, so pawn to g6. And if they did that, I thought that this looked really, really good. And again, the nature of the material bias is like, I captured a pawn, opportunity to capture back, capture the knight for the cost of a pawn. That looks good, doesn't it? But of course, what happens here is now I capture with check. The opponent is pretty much forced to move the king out of the way, and now I've gotten rid of that bishop, and things are lined up super, super dangerous. And actually, I have got a forced mate, forced mate in 12 if everyone plays perfectly correctly. That's a bit unrealistic. The opponent now brings out develops their rook, I suppose with the plan of defending that f7 square. At this point, I stopped, I think, thinking very, very clearly. I was just sort of rushing moves a little bit. The best line here, there's actually a mate in 3. And in fact, I actually saw this line after I made the next move, which made me think, oh, gee, I hope I haven't ruined my checkmate chances. But the best line here is to capture. The opponent is forced to move king to e7, can capture now the rook on h7. And now with sort of what my pieces are doing, all these squares are now so all these squares are basically sort of covered by my pieces. So logically, there's really only one place for the king to go, either here or here. But neither of those really make any difference. Let's say the king goes here because next move would be checkmate. Now, I didn't see that line, that mate in 3 line. And instead, what I saw was short castles, putting the rook now into the attack as well. And I thought, oh, maybe I've got a good move here with moving the bishop, capturing the pawn, discover check, and then the queen is lost. So that was what I was thinking when I sort of made that move. And afterwards, I saw that mate in 3 line. The opponent develops their knight, I suppose stopping that attack. However, I saw in this position what was the best move, which was to move the bishop out of the way, capture that pawn with attack on the king. The opponent cannot capture with the rook, given that would be checkmate mate in 1. In reality, it probably doesn't really make any difference. So the opponent made that move. And again, I didn't see the mate in 1 in the actual game, thinking, oh, gee, they've defended that. But of course, that rook is actually pinned. Instead, I thought, look, might as well just capture the knight with check. The opponent at this point actually resigned. A mate is impending anyway. I'm substantially ahead on material, and this is one of the strengths of the Vienna. Even though I've made some fairly inaccurate moves at the end with the mating net, it didn't really make any difference. A checkmate was impending regardless. Anyway, I was very happy that I finally won a game. A bit of a relief, actually. Good game. GG to the opponent. Arguably, I didn't actually play this game that well and won as much due to luck and my opponent's lack of familiarity with the Vienna than my own skill. Even when in a completely dominant position, I missed a simpler line for checkmate than the actual line that I played. The insight here is that sometimes it's okay to just call it quits when you're not playing well. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.